Hello and welcome to Mike's Garage. If you've already subscribed to our channel, thank you very much. If you haven't, please do. And when you do, be sure and tap on the little notification bell so you'll be notified each time we put up a new video. At the same time, if you tap the little like button, we appreciate that too. Okay, I've been kind of moving along slowly on this Panhead. This kind of ragged Panhead that's starting to clean up, you know. And in our last video, I think it was, we took the carburetor apart and I put it in a can overnight to clean its little self up. And I think there are people out there that are going to look at this thing and say, that's not the same carburetor. This is the same carburetor in all of its original brass. I think it's beautiful. Now, this is not a bike that's going to be shown or anything like that. All I did was scrub it up nice and clean, and there it is. You buy a gallon of carburetor cleaner. There's different companies that make them, McKay, Berryman. I don't even remember which one I'm using. I've got a gallon can, and it's got a screen in it, and I take the carburetor apart, and I put it in that little basket, and I drop it in. And they say 3 or 4 hours, and I leave it overnight. And I'm probably not supposed to, but that's what I did. And that's what works, and I've been doing it for a long time. The thing you have to be worried about is if you're going to leave it in for too long, the float bowl will really begin to corrode because it's aluminum. And this is a pretty nice float bowl. It looks a little corroded, but it's not. It's got good surfaces, and it's a nice float bowl. Very pleased to have it. And this, after cleaning it up, I must say, this is a pretty nice old carburetor. It's not even badly worn anywhere. So I'm pretty pleased with it. Now we're going to put it together now, which I've done on the videos before. And when I repeat something on a video, basically what I'm hoping is that if I missed showing something last time, it'll show this time. If you have questions with this time, you might go back and look at the old video, see what I showed last time. Because I'm just a guy, and I just do this stuff as it's stuff. And there are things I forget to say because I do them automatically. Now, like I said, this thing is all cleaned up. Normally, you can take the venturi out, which I didn't, because it didn't want to come out. Then I realized it really doesn't matter because I'm not going to change it. It's in good shape. It can just live there forever as far as I'm concerned. Now, so the first thing I want to do, and this is oddly enough one of the most difficult, is putting the throttle plate in, because getting that throttle plate in the right direction is really the deal. Now, the throttle shaft goes in from the bottom of the carburetor and right up and through. Now, that's something you want to check when you've got it apart to see how tight or loose that shaft is in its bushings. If, in fact, it's loose, what you need to do is put in new bushings and a new throttle shaft. And we're just not going to do that this time because it's just not that bad. Now, you'll notice I do this with the book open. I usually do it on my music stand, but I have two books here. This is the 48 to 57 Panhead book. This is the 59 to 69 Pan and Shovel book. They both show the Linkert Carburetor in them. They both give instructions. They were written by two different people. And that's the funny thing about service manuals. You got to be used to reading that particular service manual. And by having a couple of them out, I can just look at the same thing as it tells you how to orient this shaft, how the plate goes in. You know, there's an identification there. That's the proper plate for this carburetor. And you put the shaft in with the flats facing to the left, looking at it from the throttle end of the carburetor. And you just slide it in there real careful like. another thing I want to mention, and for old guys like me that are wearing really strong glasses, what you want to be sure is that the bevel on the end of this plate seats itself real nicely in the carburetor body. Now that sounds good, but there it is. Okay? The other thing to remember is that some throttles push the carburetor throttle open, some push it closed. So you want to be sure you're oriented right so that when the cable comes down, it opens this throttle the way it's supposed to be opened and closed. Now, I've got it seated in there right now, and you kind of feel it around a little bit until you get happy with how it feels in there. You get that throttle shaft pushed all the way up, and then you put the screws in. And I can hear people screaming thread locker. I can hear it, even though they're not speaking to me out loud. Those who want to use thread locker, by all means use thread locker. This is a fairly weak little shaft with a fairly weak little screw, and I think putting thread locker on there is something I don't want to do, so I'm not going to. They didn't have thread locker when this thing was invented, and you know they held on just fine. There are little lock washers on these screws. Now I'm just going to put the screws in a little bit, not too tight. And again, push the throttle shaft up from the bottom, which I'm doing with my thumb. And I'm going to work that throttle back and forth a few times. And boy, it fits beautifully. If you're wondering, you can even hold it up and look at the light and see how much light you see around that plate. And you'll know if you've got it pretty well seated in there. I'm going to loosen this one up. Give it just a little shove from the bottom. Push it down a little bit. Tighten it again. We're not in a hurry. We can do this 5 or 10 times if we want. It really doesn't matter. Being in a hurry just makes for a bad job. And then you can feel it a few times, listen to it snap closed, and know that it's just seating beautifully. Now I'm probably going to tighten those screws again a little bit. Being careful not to push down too hard. By pushing down too hard, you can do some damage. Now let's see if it still feels good. Oh yeah. Lord, it's lovey-dovey. Okay. Now I'm just going to kind of go forward on the carburetor. Right here, we have a plug that goes in there and blocks that hole. Now what that was originally put in there for was machining purposes. And we'll just put it in there. That sounded good, but I didn't do it, did I? Now all those holes have been cleared out. After soaking this overnight, then I wash it in water. Wash it in water, blow it out real good, and then a spray can of carburetor cleaner. Again, whatever brand you prefer. And it makes for a real nice way of making sure everything is really cleaned out good. Okay, that plug is seated. It's happy. I'm happy. What else? Let's see. The Venturi's kind of, like I said, pretty well stuck in place. Now, if you look at the picture of how you took things apart, you'll realize the jet goes right here in the bottom of the body here. There's a jet here with it facing the choke end. That little jet just screws right in there. Now, I happen to know this is the correct one, but you can check your service manual for the right size jet that your carburetor is using. Just want to be careful it threads in there properly, and it did. Well, good and tight, you don't want it coming out. I've never seen one come out, so I guess they don't do it very often. And over on this side is just a little plug. And that little plug is in place. Now I'm looking at it and I'm saying, wow, this is pretty cool. So maybe I'll put the high-speed needle in. Now it goes in all the way. And before I put it in, I should show. There's a little ball and spring in there. And with a little luck, it'll stay there and never does come out. No reason to take it out. And we'll just put this in a little ways to make sure it's there. See how the needle goes all the way down into the body. That's your power needle. That's your high-speed needle. That's the one you adjust while you're riding down the road. Okay, let's see. You know, the venturi hasn't moved, so we can put the emulsion tube back in there. Want to look at it? There it is. You can't put it in wrong. And it goes right up through the venturi. Usually. Well, let's see about that. And there it is. Okay. Now, let's see. Maybe we'll put the other side together. There's this little lever here. And there's a little plate here I'm missing. There it is. There's that little plate. There's a little lever and a little plate. And there's a little spring goes in there. Now there's the spring. I guess we can just put that in there real quick like. You know what? It's me getting ahead of myself. I think I'm going to put the choke plate in first. Now the choke plate, there's a little spring, and I have a brand new one here. One of the things that you do when you do a lot of these is you buy kits. And you buy kits when you find them, where you find them. And what happens is you end up kind of cannibalizing them a little bit for parts whenever you need them. But here is the spring, and it goes right in there. Let's see if I can do this without getting in the cameraman's way. Well, I meant well. All right. Now, let's see. I got to get myself oriented. I'm turning it around for the cameraman. Not doing too well for me. Okay, take that off of there kind of careful like. Wow. Okay. And there it is. Now the trick is to take this little plate. You know, I can't do this right and left very well. But if you notice, there is a flat side on this shaft. So you slide the shaft back and you put the plate on the ball and you push it down into the hole with its spring. Find out where that flat is. Right now it's on the bottom. So we're going to put it on just like this. And that ball will fall several times before I'm done. Hold it down. And there it is. That's the trick. Not real easy. And if I'm real lucky, I can get the choke plate on there. Let's see if that's true. I think that's about a 5/16. Yep. Looks pretty good. Except I may have clocked the whole thing exactly wrong. And if I did, we'll just open it up and do it again. Yes, I think I did. We'll just take it right off again. Holding it down. Little tap tap with a rawhide mallet. And the ball fell out. Okay, now we've got it right. Now we've got it right. I put it on exactly backwards. Not just backwards, exactly backwards. Okay. So we'll get that ball right back in there again. Maybe. Maybe not. Now that looks much better to me. And the nut, start with your fingers. We can tighten it again when we're through. Okay, the next thing is going to be this little arm. Now we've got a spring and the arm. There's a little plate here. So we'll just put that spring right in there. And right here, take this bolt and back it out all the way and put it in. Take that bolt out again, right there. I think I've had a little too much coffee today. And I think that's a 3/8. Looks like it. Yes, it is. Now to get everything in alignment here, to install the low-speed needle, or, as the carburetor says on it, the idle needle, basically your idle mixture. We're going to move that choke lever, and now notice all this is perfectly in line. So now, all we have to do is screw that needle in. And there's another detent ball on the end of that lever. One for the idle mixture. This is where you get those clicks that I count. And we're not adjusting it yet. We're just installing them. Well, now, everything seems to be working. And we can put the choke plate in place. Now this little pressure relief here, or whatever it's called, is going to go just like that. Then we'll put the choke on. In other words, choke it. And there it is, seated in the carburetor. So we can do that now. We'll attach the screws for that. And we've got, there isn't really that much to these carburetors. There's one screw. This is a screw installer my dad gave me years ago. I haven't even seen one in years. That's pretty neat. It holds that screw while you're starting it. Now, I'm not going to tighten these real tight yet. In fact, these screws all look like they've been oversized once. And there it is, a functioning choke. So we'll just take and tighten those up. Now, when we go to prime this thing, we'll close the choke, which lifts this needle off its seat. So you're not only choking the carburetor, you're also getting an enrichener. So it's enriching. Giving you some nice raw fuel to start the motor with. Now I'm going around and making sure everything's good and tight, which isn't too difficult. There aren't that many parts. This one I want to hold with the other end while I tighten it. And of course we already tightened these in. And we're just in real good shape here. That's basically how simple these carburetors are. The part that's really left to do is to put the float bowl together. And I've got a new float on order. I went through all my stuff. And of course I did not have a single good one. Now there is another little spring. Well, not in that kit. Must be in another kit I have here. There's a little spring that goes on the top of the throttle shaft, and I'm sure I have one here. Goes right here, so that when the throttle linkage is installed, it keeps just a little bit of tension on that throttle shaft. Okay, that's it for now. The only thing, like I said, we have left is the float bowl and float, and I think that's really worth showing, so we will show that, if not in our next video, the one after. I want to keep going, even if that new float takes a little while to get here. It's okay with me. I want a new float in there. But here we have a beautiful carburetor, and like I said, all we have left to do is assemble the float bowl with the float in it. And this thing should run just very well. So there you have it. And I guess that's it for now, so I'll see you out on the road.